Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I appreciate it. I also love it if you leave comments, so feel free to tell me what you think, ideas for videos, uh, how you do things. I really appreciate learning new stuff from other people as well. Um, I feel like making something sort of elegant today, and I have these real pretty sparkly Prasiolites, which, if you're unfamiliar with that, is amethyst that's been heat treated, and it kind of turns a pale green color. And it's a really pretty stone. I think I like the way I like the subtlety of the green color that it has. So I have a one that's 5x7 that's going to be an accent stone at the top, and then another one that's a 10x12, and that's going to be kind of our primary stone. And I'm going to put some decor around it and dome it a little bit. And it's kind of going to be a festoon necklace where it's got 2-point contact on one piece and then another piece dangles from that. I guess that's probably considered a festoon, but that's what we're going to make. So before we get started, I wanted to thank some people. My patrons over on Patreon are a fantastic group of people, and I so appreciate their support. I also really appreciate the nice community that they've built over there, and I really love seeing what they're making when they post it on my Discord server. And it's just a really friendly group of people with lots of knowledge and lots of skills, so I enjoy interacting with them. Thanks for being that way. My YouTube subscribers, we just passed 12,800, which is amazing. Thank you for that. Thank you also for the really moving comments that I get periodically from people. That's really nice. I'm glad that you're getting something out of the videos, and that is truly what keeps me going, I think. Not just financial support, but knowing that people are getting something useful out of this. So thanks for that. But also thank you for the buy me a coffees and the super thanks. Those things really help with the raw materials these days. So, all right, well, let's get started on this project. So these are a couple of my design idea books, which are available on my merch store. See, they have a nice grid pattern in the background, which helps me to kind of keep things symmetrical, since I'm not terribly good at sketching things out. I have found, though, that in recent times, if I sketch something out, I get a better outcome at the end, so I think they're handy in that way. The newer ones also have another feature on the back. This one has a conversion chart between fractions of an inch to decimals and then to millimeters as well. There's one that goes from gauge to millimeters, and there's a new one that has the melting temperatures of various types of solder on it. So I think those are all kind of useful charts to have handy. But let's get started on this project today. So the materials we're going to need, let me show you the stones first. These are a little accent stone. It's got just a tiny hint of kind of a pale mint green to it almost. And this one is a checkerboard cut on top, so it gets quite a bit of light play. This is going to be the primary stone. I think it's a pretty deep stone. That's one of the reasons I'm going to dome this, so that it has room for the pavilion to not be pushing into someone's sternum when they're wearing it. But this is going to go right here, and this is going to go up here. I'm going to put prongs on this one down here, and I'm going to bezel set this one up here. So probably start by making the bezel for this one, and then I'll make a platform for this one. And for the platform for this one, I want to get it to be where it's just pretty much exactly the size and shape of the stone, so that the prongs will come up right next to it and be just the right size. So we'll make that out of 16 gauge square wire, I think, and I'll probably taper it a little bit with a file. This is going to be made out of 3/16 inch fine silver bezel strip. That's 26 gauge, and 26 gauge is, if I remember, what is that, 0.41 millimeters maybe? And I will definitely cut it down a little bit lower, and I'll make a step bezel out of this using some 18 gauge round, which is 1.02 millimeters. to create a little platform for the stone to sit on. The rest of this is going to be 16 gauge with this is probably 18. 16 gauge is 1.3 millimeters about, and so we'll make that out of some of that. I have some chain that I cut 2 pieces at 9 inches and put jump rings on, and a clasp, and that's what I'm going to connect to this top piece here, which is going to be 14 gauge square wire, which is about 1.6 millimeters. So let's make a bezel for this, and then we'll make a platform for that, and then we'll start doing some decor coming off of that, and then we'll start piecing things together. So this is that 26 gauge 3/16 bezel, or 4.76 millimeters. I said I'm going to cut it quite a bit shorter likely. Make a little mark here. If you have not been to my channel before, I use primarily hard silver sheet solder, which looks like this. And I use a liquid flux. This particular stuff is called My-T-Flux, and I dribble it on mostly, but I occasionally spray it on with a spray bottle too. And my torch is a Silversmith model, which is this one right here, and it's an acetylene air torch, so it's just got the one tank, and it's a great torch. It's perfect for silversmithing in my opinion. Kind of gearing up for 2 big shows this summer. In the past I've always shared a booth with a friend of mine, but I have so much inventory now we decided to set up our own booth. Mostly from doing this YouTube channel. So we had to invest in our own tent, and so we set that up yesterday to see how it's set up, and it seems like a good tent. It's a pretty solid one. If you're thinking about doing shows, from my experience, it's worth spending a little extra to get a decent tent. If you buy one of the flimsy aluminum framed ones, at some point or another, there's going to be a big windstorm that's going to destroy your tent. Even the steel ones. A few years ago, I did a show in Boulder, and I set up, and then had the first day's show, and then came back for the second day, and about 75% of the tents, including mine, were just twisted messes because some kind of microburst had come down and just destroyed them. I was lucky in that I always take my product home with me because it's portable and easy to steal. So I never leave it overnight in the tent. But some people who have big art pieces and stuff leave their things overnight. Most shows usually have some kind of security, but poor lady who was a painter nearby, I saw her, all of her stuff was just ruined pretty much. And she just packed up what she could and left her destroyed tent there in disgust, I think. I felt really bad for her. She lost a lot of inventory. It's a lot of work. So, if you're going to get a tent, get a decent one. And bring plenty of weight and lay it down if you're new to doing shows. We've occasionally done some shows up in the mountains west of us at Estes Park. Those ones can be pretty windy sometimes. I've been at a couple where they canceled the show midway through the show because of the wind. pretty good on size. And we need to make a couple of rings out of that 18 gauge that fit in there nicely. You can shape these any way you'd like. I'm just going to kind of freehand shape them. That's the quickest way for me. I usually cut them slightly too long, and then snip out pieces until they fit in there snugly. That way you don't end up with a gap between the two ends of the wire. Nobody wants an embarrassing gap. Well, there's one. We'll make a second one of those that's going to sit right on top of that one. I wanted to thank all of the people who've bought my new ebook. It's if you haven't heard of it, I made a compilation downloadable guide to all of my videos that I made in 2023, which at 3 a week is well over 150 videos. And each page has a picture of the original sketch I made of the piece, a picture of the final product or products, and a list of required materials to make it, in case you want to make it, and some notes I made about the project, like, was there a part of it that I would do differently, or did I like the outcome, and did I think I could improve on it? What was the hardest part of it? What I might do differently if I was going to do it again, that kind of stuff. As well as a link to the actual video. So you can have a whole bunch of really fun projects right at your fingertips, or you can even click right on the page to get to the tutorial that shows you how to make it. So I think it's a good resource, and it's a good way to support my channel if you're interested in that. If you are, I'll put a link up here for you. You want to make sure it's not so tight that the ring rides up and sits in there crookedly, because then it'll be hard to get your stone to sit flat. You also don't want the ring to have any wobbles when if you look at it from the side, because that'll create problems as well. But that looks pretty good. So, and this one's a little bit looser than this one, so I'm going to put this one on top. Usually 2 rings is enough to raise it up high enough to where the pavilion does not poke out the back. And then we can file the top of the bezel down to match where it needs to be, to just barely go over the girdle of the stone. So I'm just double checking here that everything's tight down against the bottom. Okay, I have a bunch of this solder that I cut earlier. And I think what I'll probably do, the easiest way to solder these in is to actually make a little ring of them. I'll put one more on there just for fun. And then I'm going to flux this, and then I'm going to set it right on top of that, and then heat from the outside like I would pretty much any other bezel that's small like this. once you file it, you get a nice clean bottom like that. I kind of like that. I'm going to have this, and I'm going to have a piece of square wire up here. I'm going to put a little piece of square wire down here and kind of taper it off and add a couple of rings to the top one. So let's do that really quick while we're here. Then we can start working on this bottom piece. But I think to attach these loops, I want to angle these just slightly. Maybe I should do it at a 45. What do you think? You could use our miter vise jig if you've never seen one of these. You can just file right along here. Now, we got a nice 45 there. So let's do the other side. Make sure I do it the right. That should be right. Okay, so we got a nice 45 in either way. And I think if I let me find the center of it so I don't get it cattywampus. That's pretty close. I think the hardest part about stuff like this is making sure things are soldered together straight. I always I get it ready and I solder it and I think, oh, that came out pretty good. Then I look at it more closely and it's usually a little bit off. But the good thing about soldering silver is you can reflow the solder and adjust things a little bit sometimes if you're careful. So that makes it a little more forgiving on some things. So I do something called pick soldering, where I pick up a bit of solder on the end of this soldering pick, and then I heat up the piece to the point where it's at the solder flow temperature, and then I just touch it where I want it to go, and it jumps on there. If you're interested in that, I will put a link up here about it. It's one of those skills that opened up a lot of things that I couldn't do prior to it before I learned it. And now it makes it so much easier to, get some solder right where you want it to be. It's worth figuring out how it works and learning how to do it. You know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to sweat a little bit of solder on the top of this and then just butt it up against there. Sweating solder is when you pre-attach some solder to a piece before you put it in place and resolder it. So let's give that a shot. Sweat soldering is not, as you might think, just soldering during the current heat wave. Although you may be sweaty while soldering. Reasonably straight. Now let's make some little jump rings. In fact, I might even have some little jump rings already. Some solder here. I'm going to use a little bit bigger piece than I probably need in order to have enough to both close the ring and attach it to that piece that I made. Guess we might as well put a little solder on this one. This is sweating a little solder on here. Hope you remember that term if you're new. I think that's reasonably good. Okay. Yeah. Let's make the little platform for this thing. And like I said, I'm going to use some 16 gauge square for this, which I have a little piece here. And we're going to do it much the way we did the last thing, as far as the ring. Whenever you bend square wire, it has a tendency to try and twist sideways because it's trying to find an easier way to bend, since you're stretching out the outer side and compressing the inner side. So, periodically double check that it hasn't started to twist too much. So I want, when I'm done here, I want this to be invisible. I mean, we'll be able to see it a little bit through the stone since this is a really transparent stone. But it doesn't stick out from the girdle of the stone at all. So we need to go a little bit smaller. Set this over here for a minute. Solder this one so we can shape it better. It misshaped it a little bit in order to get those two ends lined up nicely. Once they're soldered, we can shape it however we want. I think that's pretty good. I'm satisfied with that. It's pretty good. So now I need to start thinking about how I'm going to turn this into this thing right here. So I have that part, and really, to start with, I think I can solder on just a little, 4 pieces of round 16 gauge or 1.3 millimeter wire sticking out in the 4 directions, and then I can notch in those other ones going like that, and then we'll create a circle, or excuse me, an oval or an ellipse, and we can use that, get it centered how we want, and trace out where we need to cut those off in order to get it to fit on there. So I want those to kind of do this in the corners here. If I want those to do it perfectly, I could file a 45-degree angle with the miter vise jig on this one. Should we do that? As long as I can get it to sit in there like that, that should be good. So I have filed all of those down. You'll notice too that I bent the ends of this just a little bit, and I did that so that because round wire will roll around, and I wanted to make sure that those 45-degree angles were facing inwards, and so I bent it in such a way that it can't roll really. So we'll just pick those on there and we'll kind of work our way around. So for this one I chose kind of an angular shape. I've seen a lot of old-fashioned things that had kind of similar designs. So you could do, instead of these kind of straight angular lines, you could do some kind of swirly stuff around the stone and come up with kind of a completely different look. So now I'm going to make an oval out of the same material, and we'll try to get it pretty close to that size, maybe slightly bigger. Kind of liking that size. So I think I'm going to cut it off about there. File this, and then I'm going to solder it closed. If you're new to soldering, if you ever want things to solder well, it's a good idea to get them pushing together snugly. So if you pull on them, they're not like immediately pulling apart. Just a little forward pressure. If I want this to look symmetrical, I need to make sure that things are as straight and symmetrical before I solder it all together as possible. So one of the things you can do, I make these black. I use a sharp pin. Once I have this in place, so I've scratched a little mark on the inside where these will join up with this outer ring here. We're pretty close anyway, so I'm going to snip them off a little long and file it until it fits in there nicely. We're going to put a ring at the top of this thing here. And I was thinking, when I was doing this other one, I left it open, but I think I'm going to have a third ring in the middle, so I'll leave that one open and I'll probably solder that one shut. I think that side looks a little better. Now, let's kind of gently flatten the overall thing so that all of the sides are laying down. That looks pretty good. I'm going to, I think I'm going to take my smaller file and then I'm going to use my Dremel with a diamond burr probably to taper it down. Alright, so I got this marked off kind of where I want those prongs to go, and we're going to mount the prongs to the outside of this. But to do that, I'm going to create kind of a little four-sided cage to mount it on there, and that'll make it a little bit easier to put prongs on. So I file a notch in the center of this, going diagonally like that, so that these would lay a little bit better. And then we'll just solder these together. This is 16 gauge round as well. If you don't have the angle quite right, do it kind of like this to get it to meet up. Right. So if I line those up, then I make a mark right about here. Kind of bend them all 90 degrees down. Be in pretty good shape, hopefully. Let's go like that. Bend it straight down. Same way on this one. And the real trick is I want to get these to line up nicely on those marks. So one thing I might do is make sure these are all about the same length. You could, if you wanted to get really precise, make a little notch on the outside of this. This is called a magnesia block, and it's one of those softer surfaces that makes it, you can kind of push things into. So if I get these positioned nicely, should be able to get them soldered on pretty well. Pretty close. I may get a couple of these and then we'll do a couple more, but I'm going to use a little bit of easy paste solder for this last one because I don't want anything here really dropping off. So I am going to go ahead and flux it even though this doesn't really require it. Okay, let's see if we can't get that hot enough for those to stick on there. I'm going to go ahead and cut off another little ring to hook these two together. I like stuff like this because it has nice movement when it's hanging from a chain. I'm going to do a little more of that easy solder on that ring, and we'll call it good and let it pickle. Presupposing I'm successful. Let those things pickle. Come back, I will cut those prongs off, get it prepped for the stones, file that bezel down to the correct height, and then we will set those stones. So I went ahead and did the bezel set stone off camera. I figured this is more of kind of an advanced video, so I saved the prong set one to put in here. It's all shined up and everything. So I'm going to start by moving these prongs inwards just a little bit. We want to do that until this little guy stops moving too much. And then I'm going to check how flat it's sitting in here. I'm going to use this flat side here to kind of push down a little bit. This side. And on this side over here. Okay, so typically what I'll do is, this is the table facet up top. The girdle of the stone is the widest part of the stone. And about midway up, the facets that are between them is usually where I cut this off. And the last thing that I'm going to do is, and I'm not going to do this on camera, I'm just going to go over, I'm going to use an abrasive white wheel and shape these down to points and thin them out a little bit, and then I'll push them down the rest of the way to make sure they're really tight and smooth. And then I'll use a blue knife edge silicone polisher to kind of smooth those prongs out so they look really nice. Then I'll add a chain, like I said, so I have some little jump rings, and I'll just be hooking those right onto here, and then we'll have a nice kind of sort of festoony sort of necklace. That's kind of what I was shooting for. Like I said, I made it a little bit, the proportions slightly different. I made it a little taller this way, and I think I like that better anyway. So. All right, I'll take some better pictures after I'm done finishing that up and then put them at the end. Well, that was the domed Prasiolite festoon pendant, I guess we're probably going to call it, something like that. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. That helps out a lot. And the other thing is take a moment and check out some of my other videos. I have over 350 videos now, which blows me away a little bit. I'm putting out 3 per week, and I try to do a mix of different skill levels, so no matter what skill level you're at, I think you'll probably be able to find something that's useful to you. I don't know everything, and I certainly be the first to admit to that, but I do have some advanced projects, some intermediate projects, and lots of beginning projects, so check them out, watch a few, and subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. The other thing is, check out the video description down below. You can find that ebook I talked about if you want to get that. It's a great guide to all of the 2023 videos. There's a link to the merch store if you want to get one of those design idea books. And there's a link to Patreon if you want to check out that community over there and find out more about that. There's even a link to Pepe Tools, to which I'm an affiliate these days. So if you click on that and buy yourself a nice big rolling mill, that helps me out a lot. So go do that. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.